Again, there's a common misconception with anti-vaxxers is that they say we inject live viruses, and it's like no, because then we would be causing the same disease. We're wanting to prevent that disease in the first place. So this is a really elegant. So some of you might have had this Gardasil, and what does it prevent? HPV. And what it's trying to do is prevent reproductive cancers, especially things like uterine cancer, cervical cancer, even oral and rectal cancers as well. So what happens with what is HPV? Well, human papilloma virus. So this is what HPV looks like on the outside. So the really cool thing about Gardasil, so it's like some people say, oh, I got a really bad reaction to Gardasil. And often when you get a reaction from a vaccine, it's due to the inflammation or due to the adjuvants. So the thing is like it's not actually due to being infected with this original live or the original pathogen. So how does Gardasil work? Well, it's really interesting. So all these parts, notice that you have a lot of this repeating structure over and over in the HPV or the human papilloma virus. So it's really interesting. So what this one scientist did is they actually got bacteria to express only the protein, the envelope protein of HPV. So only the protein that coats the outside of a HPV. The interesting thing, even without any DNA, if you just make pure protein that consists of exact only this outside, actually forms a big ball. So live HPV virus that's able to replicate typically has its DNA inside the virus. So this is how it's able to replicate over and over again. But when you just have the outside protein and just throw it in the test tube, it can actually form these balls that look like HPV, but it's hollow on the inside. There's no genetic material. So can these replicate? Nope, they can't replicate because there's no genetic material. Since there's no genetic material, now this can't replicate. So what happens is how does it work? Well, the thing is that you can generate antibodies, you can generate T cell receptors and B cell receptors against this outer coating. So what do you do? What is Gardasil? Basically just taking this outer protein, no DNA, injecting it into a patient, and their immune system is able to recognize the outer layer of HPV and mount immune system attacks against HPV. So this is what's really cool about this one. And why is HPV? So actually, I think there was a really good debate, and the thing is like, so why is HPV so often people are like, okay, HPV is like, why do you give it to preteens? And it's like you're encouraging women and men to have sex or premarital sex or like at a young age, and it's like, no, this isn't dealing with that. Actually, you should talk if you're in public health. Take Dr. Dela Cruz's class. It's really great, and she actually studies this stuff. And they often ignore the fact that when you give, it's not really about saying something social. It's like, well, when you're 12 and 13, you're actually going to generate more antibodies against HPV. This is when the vaccine is most effective. You have the highest antibody concentrations if you give it in that age window. We're not saying like, okay, so again, it's being driven by data, not by social things. And why is it important? Well, again, remember reproductive cancers. Like, there's a really sad case where this woman, she was like, she only had one boyfriend in her life, and she married him. But the thing is that, well, he was her first, but she wasn't his first. He had HPV. She got cervical cancer. She needed a hysterectomy at age 20, I believe 26. Yeah, so she couldn't have children, and why? Because of HPV. So the thing is, like, I think she was able to have a child after, so the thing is that she found she had uterine cancer while she was pregnant. She was able to successfully deliver the child, thank goodness. But yeah, that's the only child she can have. And is it really fair that she had the uterine cancer? No. So again, this is why HPV, we don't want people to have this reproductive cancer in the future. Maybe because I mean, just because it might be your first, but you don't know who else was before that and if they had HPV as well. So again, it's more about preventing cancer. It's not about saying like we're promoting all this like sexual activity. It's more about health, not really about morals and whatnot. Okay, so then there's another class. So vaccines often have the antigens for the pathogen you're trying to prevent. So there's also additional chemicals. So this is where a lot of anti-vaxxers have kind of shifted their argument. It's like, what about the thiomersal, which we don't have anymore? And other things like alum, and they try to say all these things called adjuvants. So they kind of try to shift the focus from because again, we're not injecting the live virus, or if we are, it's not the total intact live virus. We're trying to weaken the virus so it can't replicate in your body. So now they shifted away from the antigens and now to these chemicals called adjuvants. So what are adjuvants? So adjuvants are chemicals added to a vaccine to further boost the immune response. So they're not the antigen. But this is the thing, and this is why vaccines, can we just take like SARS-CoV-2 and kill it with formaldehyde and inject into someone? Well, the thing about this is like, why are there so many adjuvants and why are there so many chemicals we add to vaccines? Sometimes you can take the original pathogen or antigens, inject it into someone. You do get immune response, but you don't really, sometimes happens is that the memory T and B cells don't stick around. So this is why adjuvants are often used to, one, help stabilize antigen. If the antigen falls apart as soon as you inject it, your immune system isn't going to recognize the correct antigen, so it'll be useless when it actually encounters the original pathogen. It also helps to activate macrophages and lymphocytes and also helps to stimulate inflammation. So the thing is, like, sometimes you need not only to introduce the antigen, but also send off it's kind of like a dinner bell to your immune system and all the macrophages, dendritic cells. So it's kind of like saying, hey, come in, look at this antigen here, come on, train yourself against this new antigen that we want you to build up immunity against. So these adjuvants, so sometimes some adjuvants work better than others. Like common things include well, they stopped using alum. Now it's like aluminum hydroxide, but even other chemicals, or even some things like saponins, or even things like that are known to cause inflammation. Why? Because again, you want that immune response. So, but the thing is that inflammation, that's why you often have these side effects. And again, you do have inflammation. Why? Because you want an immune response to these antigens so that you're able to actually combat against the real pathogen. Alright, so this was smallpox. So do we still see smallpox today? Thankfully, we don't see anybody with smallpox. And look at this. Oh my goodness, all these like boils everywhere and this poor kid, right? So what we want with vaccines, what we really hope for every disease like this is that smallpox. The only where smallpox is like, I think in liquid nitrogen in only a few labs, it's under strict lock and control. But this is one of the best success cases with vaccines, and this is what we hope all vaccines can hope. This is like the ideal case for a vaccine. So thanks to a global effort with the World Health Organization, pretty much smallpox was eliminated in the wild. So what they did is, again, they take antigens that look like smallpox. They had mandatory vaccination. So what did that do? Well, smallpox was pretty much prevented from infecting more people. So this is why smallpox is still around, but it's under lock and key. All right,